no matter how the world treats you or how the world sees you, especially when you get out of Sri Lanka or your motherland, you still have to keep believing in yourself. And after a while, everybody else will also start believing in you because they don't have an option. They'll have to believe in you.
Hello everyone. Welcome to yet another chapter of the series of interviews conducted by the Department of Chemistry of the University of Colombo. I am Yasirvindula Alvis, an undergraduate student following the Bachelor of Science Honours degree in Pharmacy. Today's interview is quite important and special for all the undergraduate students of the University of Colombo. Why? Because one of our alumni will be joining with us today. It is indeed an honor to have been given with this opportunity to interview such an intellectual who had kept his mark in the field of research. Please welcome Dr. Gayan Wijeratne, who is currently an assistant professor of chemistry in the University of Alabama at Birmingham. A pleasant evening to you, sir.
Same to you. Nice to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for taking your time amidst of a busy schedule to participate in this conversation.
Sure, glad to do it.
To start off, could you give a brief insight where you started your maybe your academic activities, how you grew up, and how you entered the field of sciences?
Sure. I was born and raised in Kandy, Sri Lanka, and both my parents are teachers. They are both high school teachers. They teach science and mathematics. So from my childhood, I had a very household, and we have about 10 teachers in our whole family. So we have a lot of teachers in our family. So we always hear about teaching and how to succeed in teaching and things like that. And I had my secondary education at Trinity College, Kandy. I was there till 2003, and then I passed over to University of Colombo for my undergraduate studies. So when I was advanced level student, I used to teach a lot to my friends at school and at home. So at weekends, my mother would cook us a big lunch, and we would have like 10 friends over, and I teach them on a whiteboard, mainly chemistry and biology. And so I was very fond of teaching. And I'm an only child. I grew up with my cousins. So friends were an important part of my life. So I taught them a lot, and it was very interesting and entertaining to me. And I, set up question papers and graded them. So I did some serious teaching back then. So in the University of Colombo, I took the zoology study scheme. So I studied chemistry, zoology, and biochemistry. So first of all, the reason for coming to Colombo is mainly because I wanted to do biochemistry. So back in the day, University of Wijeratne didn't have any biological sciences other than a little bit of biochemistry. So I was always wanting to do something related to bioscience and biochemistry. So that was the main reason for me for to coming to Colombo instead of Wijeratne, because Wijeratne was like only 15 minutes away from my house, and all my cousins went there, and everybody was like, "Why are you going to Colombo?" So I wanted to do it because I wanted to learn biochemistry. And when I went there, I really enjoyed the urban campus. It's right in the middle of the city. So that urban environment had always fascinated me. I always loved to live in a same type of environment, and I do right now. We also. So it's really interesting to me. And when I was taking classes, my absolute favorite was zoology, and chemistry was also there, but I really loved zoology. I never studied zoology, but I got straight A's on all of the classes. And at the end of 2 years, chemistry and zoology were like my absolute favorites. So when I was trying to select a special degree, I selected chemistry, but I really still wanted to do something related to biology. So when I got to my fourth year research project, inorganic chemistry was actually my absolute favorite, and I had the I had the luck of doing research with Professor Hevage, and she was an absolutely fantastic mentor, and she has been for a lot of great alumni of UOC. So she gave me a synthetic project, although at the time we were we were not very um, um, uh, we didn't have all the chemicals that we needed, so we had to wait a little bit. So then I decided I'll do something related to Sri Lankan natural products, and I ended up doing metal complexes of Sri Lankan black pepper and piperine, and then investigating the antifungal activity with Professor Jasundara in biology. So, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, she was also doing a similar type of research. She was doing research with Professor Rohini De Silva, and she did some nanochemistry, and they were studying bioactivity of those with Dr. Vijay Sudhara as well. So it worked out really well, and I was able to do my bioinorganic research that I sort of built for myself. And Professor Hevage was very, very happy and thrilled to see what I was able to do. And honestly, I was very lucky, so that project worked, and we were able to publish it in the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Sciences. And then when I wanted to apply for PhDs, I still wanted to do bioinorganic, and that's what I did in KU, University of Kansas. And when I wanted to do a postdoc, many people would divert into a different direction when they do a postdoc. But for me, bioinorganic was everything. And I moved to Johns Hopkins to do a postdoc in bioinorganic chemistry, which was absolutely fun for me. And now I do bioinorganic research. So I've stayed in the same lane. I've learned a lot, still learning. But so that's how I am here right now. And that's a little bit of my background.
So even though you preferred zoology over chemistry, finally you combine those two avenues, right?
Yeah, that happened in a funny way, because my mother's favorite subject is chemistry, and my father's absolute favorite is zoology. So I think I had both in me. And if you talk to some of the demonstrators and professors in zoology, we had a really fun time. We had a lot of field trips and all of these things. So I didn't want to lose that interest, and I think in chemistry, the biochemistry or bioinorganic area had really captured my interest, and it's very exciting for me, which is what keeps me going.
Okay, when we consider about your journey started from Sri Lanka, you have been a recipient of several awards. Can you mention few of them?
Yeah, so I'm actually very gifted to actually very lucky to win the R.S. Ramakrishna Gold Medal at the University of Colombo, and that is usually awarded to the best student in inorganic chemistry. And I'm even more luckier because I shared the medal with my wife. So we both shared the medal at that in 2009 when we graduated. And it really sort of guided me through to my career. Like I wanted to do something with it, because I felt that I can really do something good with what I learned. And when I moved to the University of Kansas, I entered as a student of special scholarships for best incoming student as a graduate student. So I felt very accepted there as well. And after 5 years, I was able to win the highest medal in the department, which is the Higuchi Gold Medal for the best graduate student. It's a funny thing to look back and see, because it was certainly not an easy journey. We'll talk about the details in the coming questions. But like after 5 years, to have appreciated by your PhD school, is actually quite thrilling and gratifying, and that actually wanted me to do something to this world even more, and treat or give something back to the society from what I learned. And I was also able to get dissertation honors back then for my dissertation, because I had over 6 papers at the time of graduating. Now I have over 13 papers from my graduate studies. Um, so you know, the secret is just keep working hard, and that's what got me here. And these awards are really interesting and important to me. But what is even more important is the motivation that they gave me to keep going. So that's, I think, very important to anybody who's winning an award, currently or in future.
So it is clear that the standard that you obtained from the undergraduate studies were maintained up to the graduate studies as well, because you were able to win several awards in the graduate studies as well. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask how those honors and awards helped you to learn certain things that were necessary for your life, and you gave the answer even before I asked how those things helped you to gain motivation for your further studies. So I would like to drift you back to your undergraduate studies. When doing academic activities, beside of academic activities, were you involved in other activities? I mean, extracurricular activities.
Yes. So actually, it's a little funny to me looking back. I had more extracurricular activities than what I had time for science, because like I was from Kandy, and I had to Monday morning I come to Colombo in the bus. I wake up in like 3 o'clock in the morning and come to Colombo in at 4 o'clock in the morning. My dad would drop me at the bus stand, and then I would come to Colombo for the 8 o'clock lecture. So it was a big back and forth. I was never interested in staying the weekend in Colombo because I wanted to come back to my hometown because I was missing my family and friends and all of that. But even more, I'm still am a very active chorister. I sing in choirs, a few different choirs. Um, Even back then. So I sang in two church choirs in Kandy and one choir in Colombo. So that was all my time, like I had a lot of fun doing that, and communities, and then I did some community work in the church as well. And I think that's absolutely important. Even as a professor now, I tell my students to find something that interests you, do it, find a hobby, like if you want to play a sport, just do it. And if not, like just go watch a movie. I tell my students, don't work on Sundays, at least on Sundays, like take your time off, spend time with your family, do whatever you want. Because I think pressing the refresh button in your mind is very important to keep going and increase your productivity as a scientist. So yes, I did all of that, and I also taught in Sunday school in my church, and I was able to help a lot of kids who needed different types of help. And that is something that I actually miss very much now because I don't have the time for that anymore. But hopefully, when my academic career sort of settle down, I'm still in the process of orienting myself to the academic career because it's just 2 years into my job yet. But when this all settles down, I certainly hope to go back and do all of that again, at least to some extent. So yes, I think that's absolutely important that you have something outside your studies, and that helps you tremendously to increase your productivity and motivation to keep going. Otherwise, I think you just drain out, especially in grad school.
So you basically explained how not being just a bookworm is important in life. I like that word, that refreshing your mind is by doing those extracurricular activities. So when I consider uh, anyone who is climbing your own ladder will face bumps and barriers throughout your life. So can you explain such incidents that you have faced in your life? especially the ones that have inspired you the most?
Yes. Like I said, this journey certainly hasn't been easy. Um, so, uh, like I said, I came to Colombo from Kandy as an undergrad student. I was very excited to come and start working at the University of Colombo, and I did. But I'm also a person who adapts very slowly to new situations. So I was not adapting very well to being away from home. I was very homesick in the first days in Colombo, and so I was going back and forth a lot. And I was starting to question myself, like, did I do the right thing by coming to Colombo? Why couldn't I stay with my friends? Like, my cousins are back there. I could go home every day if I was in Wijeratne. So all of these questions are coming into my mind. But actually, what kept me going mostly was a few important people that motivated me. I'll get back to that in a different part of your interview. But I think keeping you in track is very important, and identifying your priorities is important. So when I was in Colombo, I didn't have a good place to stay for a long time, and it was very very haunting to me, because I come from a big family in terms of my cousins and everybody. We lived very close by. So and trying to start this new life with new friends was very strange and hard for me. And like I said, I always run back home every weekend, so I couldn't catch up with any of my friends in Colombo. They do fun things in the weekend and I'm gone. So it was a little weird, but I think it came out okay. And then in graduate school, I can tell you, it's a different type of challenge. Like, you'd have to work really hard. And I think undergraduate students in Colombo should really think about, like, if you come to graduate school, I think Sri Lankan students do really well no matter where they go. But it's a lot of work. We got married just before we came to the US. So we were newly married, and graduate school, and my wife was an organic chemistry graduate student. They never get out of the lab. So it's tough. It was very tough. But if you are with if you are surrounded by the right people, and if you have identified your priorities and your advisor, your boss, very well, I think that helps you out a lot to overcome these challenges, because the challenges are always going to be there. It's just a matter of how you tackle it. And the postdoc situation is even more fierce. Like, you come to the US, you're a student, and when you graduate, you're not a student anymore. So you're in this limbo where you are between a job and a graduate study. So everybody's like, you have a PhD, why don't you do like a really good job? Why are you doing a postdoc? But then you do a postdoc, and it's no man's land. In a graduate, you work with some graduate students, you feel like you're back to grad school. And for this same reason, good postdocs are hard to find these days, because nobody really want to do that anymore. But either way, I think all of that is teaching you to be strong, because all of that is important. And I thought I was having the hardest time, but then you become a professor, a different type of challenges come over, right? But I think your experiences and ability to succeed through all of this is absolutely important. And I think the challenges that you face in undergraduate studies and graduate studies are the most important things, because that is your time period where you mature as a human being. Like, you go from this boy or girl situation to a man or woman situation, where you want to start thinking about things in an adult way. You want to think about things responsibly. So I think that's actually very important. And being in Colombo, and the studies I've done in University of Colombo, and later on doing a lot of collaborative studies with special degree students, organizing things, all of these had prepared me really well for all of that. So yeah, it's a great question, and I think that's very important. Challenges are the things that would mold you and keep you going.
So most the important part of this sort of interviews is how challenges were there in this sort of eminent scientist life and how they overcome them. So that is the most important part. So thank you very much for explaining those things. So I would like to question you more about your research areas. You previously mentioned that you are currently doing research in the bioinorganic chemistry area. So can you explain more about that? What?
Yes. So I'm a synthetic inorganic chemist. So what we do is we synthesize ligands to make metal complexes that look like enzyme active sites. So we pick an enzyme that has a metal in the active site, and we try to understand the biochemistry carried out by that metal center, right? So originally, this type of research has been done purely on proteins, which is the actual science about the biology. But like sometimes proteins are very stubborn, right? They are not very cooperative. You can't put them in organic solvents. You can't change the pH. You can't heat them up. Because of these reasons, studying mechanistically the processes mechanistically is not very easy with proteins, right? So for this same reason, people have identified this area over especially the last 20-25 years, which is synthetic bioinorganic chemistry, where you would synthesize small molecules that are resemblant of your enzyme active sites. So now these small molecules can actually mimic the chemistry is carried out by the protein. The protein is very bulky, but strangely enough, the small molecule that mimics the small active site can actually mimic the chemistry of the whole protein. Maybe not the dynamics, but it can mimic the chemistry of the protein, which is pretty fantastic. Now we have a small molecule which is synthetic. You can put it in any solvent like acetone, DCM, methanol, whatever you want, and you can cool it down to lower temperatures and study these mechanisms under slow motion. So my lab does a lot of research under cryogenic conditions. We cool them down to liquid nitrogen temperatures, liquid helium temperatures, and we study reactive intermediates, right? So for studying reactive intermediates, we use low temperatures, and since they are not stable, we'll have to use spectroscopic techniques and computational techniques to characterize them. Because if you are lucky, you can get a crystal structure, but most often you cannot. So in that case, we use a ton of different spectroscopic techniques: UV-based spectroscopy, IR, EPR, and X-ray absorption spectroscopy. We'll have to travel a bit to do that. We'll have to go to a national lab environment to do that. And then we make sure that we collect the right data and put all those data together, and sometimes computationally we model these molecules, and all of this information can paint a picture which is the detailed mechanistic landscape of this enzymatic pathway. And now we can tell the biochemist, hey, this might be how your protein is working. This is what you should be thinking about, and this is some of the experiments that you probably should be modeling. And this type of work has really tremendously helped a lot of unknown enzymes and proteins, going back to the early stages of hemoglobin, where models have really helped people understand what the structure of oxyhemoglobin was like, and so on and so forth. So that's what my lab is doing. So my lab is specifically interested in iron and nickel containing enzymes. So right now my main interest is on heme centers. Heme is iron in the middle of porphyrin. So it's a big cofactor that you have in a lot of different intensely colored proteins like our blood and things like that. So there's a lot of unknowns in those proteins, right? So we are studying midvalent oxidants of heme enzymes like superoxides, peroxides, and things like that. And we also want to study things like nitric oxide, peroxynitrite. So reactive intermediates of oxygen and nitric oxide containing systems is what we are concentrating on right now. They're tremendously important for both pathogenesis in humans and then also drug design in future future therapeutic applications. So that's what we are concentrated on right now.
So you mentioned that you are interested about nickel-containing metal enzymes as well, right? So have you studied urea sort of enzymes previously, or are you planning to study?
So what we are studying is nickel containing oxygen activating enzymes.
Okay.
Something like, like superoxide dismutase and things like that. And another important thing that you can get out of this research is that, if you think about an enzyme, it's a catalyst, right? It's a biological catalyst. And if you think about our body doesn't have toxic metals, right? Our body doesn't have platinum centers in proteins. Our body doesn't have palladium, zirconium. We don't have those in the proteins. What we have is nickel, manganese, iron, those really non-toxic, abundant, green metal centers. Now, when we study these molecules and how they work, we are all of a sudden in the area of green catalysis, right? So we can introduce to the society or to the industry, this might be how you should be doing this synthetic route, right? Because synthetic chemists right now, they use a lot of toxic, expensive metals like palladium, platinum, rhodium. They are toxic to the environment. They dump in, large scale. So one of the main areas that we would like to branch into even more in the future is green catalysis. Can we learn from biology and can we apply them to the industry to do environmentally benign atom economical catalysis processes?
So I think the nature is having more solutions than what we have already developed. So better to explore that area. So
Absolutely.
as an eminent scientist who involved in inorganic chemistry, what do you think the most exciting discovery that you have made in your life?
So I think there's a few, but I'm actually extremely interested, excited about our first paper that came out in JAX last year. So my group is still small and it's a baby group right now. But we had our first paper come out last December, earlier this year, which is on tryptophan cleaving enzymes. So we have a few different enzymes that break down tryptophan in our bodies, which are all heme enzymes. And those enzymes break down tryptophan to what is known as N-formyl kynurenine, and eventually it gets broken down to NAD+. So this is how our bodies break down the essential amino acid tryptophan. So why is it important? This process is very much involved in a lot of different pathogenesis in humans, especially in cancer. So it has been identified very recently, not very recently, but quite recently, that this pathway has an important role to play with how our immune system reacts to early stages of cancer. So people think that if you block these enzymes, if you block the tryptophan breakdown process, maybe you can earlier on or prematurely catch the cancer or stop it from growing. So, but how would you block an enzyme that you don't know how it works, right? So that's what we are trying to discover. Can we use our model systems and can we model the mechanistic pathway of these enzymes to show people that these are some of the effective ways of blocking this enzyme? And we have been able to use our small molecule model systems and model this entire mechanism, which was the JAX paper that came out, which was done for the first time, and we are really excited about it. And irrespective of the heme chemistry being like 150 years old, we were able to do that pretty straightforwardly in our first study. So now we have a lot of questions in front of us, and we would like to elucidate the mechanism as in detail as possible and get to therapeutic applications of that mechanism. And I was reached out to by a lot of important scientists in the field to say that, like, this study is really cool, like, we are here to help you. So it was very gratifying to publish that and to get that feedback. And I think that's certainly one of the most important findings that I've done so far, and really excitedly waiting to do more science.
So previously we discussed what are the challenges that you faced in your life. Now I would like to focus on what are the challenges that you faced while conducting research.
Yeah, so it certainly depends on where you are, and people matter, facilities matter, those things matter. But if I were to tell you the most important challenges that I have faced in my undergrad research and my research in the US, in my undergrad research, I think it was a lot more challenging to get things done. Like we worked under a limited number of people. We had tremendous people to help us. We had absolutely fantastic lab technicians and professors to guide us. But still, some facilities were missing, and like when we were doing, especially when we were doing microbiology, that was very challenging. And I'm not sure if the botany department has developed these facilities since we've been there, but when we were there, the microbiology lab certainly could be developed a little bit more. So microbiology is a very sensitive study, right? If you have a tiny bit of something leak into your system, then your whole study has to be thrown away. So that was actually very challenging and frustrating to me. And I'm a person who sweats a lot usually, and I had to run from chemistry to botany all the time, and then it's not fun. But it's good though, because I think those challenges teach you, and those challenges help you appreciate the things that you have in life once you have them. So I think, but I still absolutely believe that all of those things molded me. And now to look back, I think it's better that I didn't have them in my undergrad studies, because I think I appreciate them even more. And I learned to do everything the fundamental way. I learned to do microbiology with having two Bunsen burners on my two sides. And one fell on my arm one time. And so these are all good things. Like you learn how to do things in the most fundamental way, and then you can do anything after that. So I think that's very important. And in the US, it's a little bit different because like, as you may or may not know, when you come to the US, you have a culture difference. You're all of a sudden in a different environment, different society. So for me, one of the most challenging things I faced in the earlier in my career is to prove myself. Like show people that I can do it, because there had been times when I felt that either my PI or my colleagues were not believing in me, or they might not have thought that we were capable of doing what we were able to do as coming from a country like Sri Lanka. But proving yourself is absolutely important. It is irrespective of where you go. That's very important. Even when you start a job, you have to prove yourself, right? You can't expect people to praise you from day one, and that's not going to happen. So proving yourself is absolutely important. And then like I said, when I was graduating from KU, I had a few papers, and then when I went to the postdoc, I had to start from ground zero. And then in my postdoc, I only had 2 or 3 years, and that time I had to learn new science, master it, and work in a very competitive environment like Johns Hopkins. I never saw my PI because it was a big lab, 15 people. And the PI was he's a very established scientist. So you don't get to see him every day. So it was a totally different environment, and you still had to succeed. So living up to your proven success is also a very important thing. So all of these things, I think, are some of the important challenges that I've faced going from undergrad studies to PhD to postdoctoral, and now where I am. Again, when you start a job, again, you start from ground zero. You have this really nice resume with a lot of publications, and people are looking at you. They're looking at you on what you're doing, and you need to keep working hard and prove yourself and live up to it is, I think, one of the most important things I've learned.
Well, as an undergraduate student of the same university where you studied, I would like to know how important was the fundamental knowledge and basic research experience that you gathered from your undergraduate studies help to build a scientist like you today. You spoke about this matter a little bit in the previous question as well, so I want you to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's everything. So when I think about my undergrad studies, I come back to my undergrad studies every single day, because right now I teach inorganic chemistry to juniors, that means third year graduate students currently. And what we learned in Colombo University is much more challenging and much more tougher. So it's in a different level. And so I think the fundamental understanding that I got in Colombo University is actually very, very important. I still go to my notes. I still look at Professor Wijeratne's bioinorganic chemistry notes, and I still look at Dr. Havergay's notes, and all of that is tremendously important. And I think the fundamental understanding of principles in chemistry is actually very important, right? We didn't learn science to study and forget at the end of the semester, but we still remember at least I remember the exact lectures, and I have photographic memories of the lectures of Colombo University, and I think it's very, very important. And sometimes things don't go well, like sometimes if you don't pay attention, you don't understand. But what I always did was I would directly go to the library right after the lecture, and I would sit down and go through the notes from somebody else and try to understand if I didn't understand in the lecture. So it was real time for me, and I never came home without trying to understand what I didn't understand, especially in chemistry. So I think that has given me a lot of memories and good understanding and good remembrance of what I learned in the University of Colombo. And they are still paying me to be here. I remember by inorganic chemistry, by organic chemistry, physical chemistry, advanced physical chemistry, all of these advanced organic chemistry, all of these things that we learn. And I think that's everything, especially when you do research, because you have to think about problems in so many different ways.
So you compared the research experience that you gathered in a developing country like Sri Lanka at the same time with a developed country like the United States. I would like to ask two questions from you. What did you most enjoy about working in the United States? And secondly, what did you miss most about Sri Lanka?
I think the answer to that question is both. Both, I think, regarding people. So I think in the US, one of the important things that I saw was that people are, they are very supportive, but at the same time, they are very professional and less judgmental, and they give you your space to work and to succeed. So that I thought was actually fantastic. Like you get more freedom to do whatever you want, and at the end of the day, they are just evaluating your efficiency and productivity. That's what I tell my students too. I never ask my students to work in the lab for 9 hours a day. I just give them goals, like these are your goals for the next week. I don't care when you work, just tell me what the results are in a week. And so I've learned a lot to work that way. And what I miss mostly about Sri Lanka is also people, because I think Sri Lankan people are just fantastic. They can't be replaced wherever you go in the world. And the hospitality and the homeliness of even the lab lecture anywhere you go is definitely missing, and family and friends definitely missing. And that affects your research, that affects your work. I think that's you're a full package, right? You can't break apart your mental situation or your personal situations with your professional situation. Everything is in together. So I think those are important things, that important differences that I have seen in the two countries. There are other things, facilities and everything, but I think this is the most important thing that is sticking out to me in comparison of the two places.
As an assistant professor of the University of Alabama, Birmingham, you do extensive research work and guide other researchers. And at the same time, I believe that you are doing some teaching modules for students as well. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you are doing both those activities, research and academic activities, what is the most preferred one, teaching or doing research?
That's actually one of your toughest questions to me. I think both, because like in the US, you can go in so many different paths for your career. If you wanted to do research only, you can go to what is called a research institute, where you do research every day. Um, you know, write grants, find money, just do research. You don't teach. But on the other hand, there are primarily teaching universities where you teach undergraduate students, and it's pretty much like just teaching every semester, grading the exams, like, and go through all of that, and then start teaching the next semester, and no research, and maybe a little bit of research. But I wanted a balance of both because um, teaching is actually in my blood. Like I said, I absolutely enjoy teaching, and I think it's a very precious job. And what my parents have always, what I've seen them do is they treat their students as if they were their children. Like my mother's thing is like you have to be very honest in teaching, because what you teach other people's kids is what you get back, is what her philosophy was. So I learned a lot from that, and I think that's absolutely true. And I want to, if I want to sleep well at night, I need to do fair uh, fair game for everybody. So I need to do research, help out my graduate students and my postdocs, and then I need to teach really well, make sure my students are doing well, try to do as much as possible for them to earn good grades, and so on and so forth. So I think that's important, and balancing that is actually quite fun. I love it. And research is totally driven by curiosity. Like, I want to learn how things work. Like I'm never, yeah, I'm never a big fan of doing what somebody else tells me to do. That is probably why I didn't want to go to industry, because I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to design research projects and see what happens if you mix this with that. Like, that kind of thing has driven my research a lot. So I, like you can imagine, I was born as a normal person in a very normal family, but if you think about it, I don't want to die that way. I want to do something to this world. So I think there's a lot of potential by having a research group and research facilities and all of these potentials, and also having the potential to mold a life of a young chemist or a scientist is absolutely gratifying. So I cannot pick one out of the two.
So definitely those students and your research students might be getting a lot of things from you. So in the other hand, what are the things that you have learned from working with them or teaching them?
Yeah, so I can start from teaching, and teaching students had taught me a lot of important lessons. And when I say teaching, it's not only teaching in the classroom. As a researcher, I teach every day in the lab, mentoring students, mentoring undergrads and postdocs. All of this is, to me, is teaching. And I'll tell you a little story from my graduate school days when I was a final year graduate student. When you get to the fifth year and when you're about to finish your graduate studies, you're just concentrated on your thesis, and you're just out the door. You just want to finish because you spent the 5 long years and you're ready to finish. But at this point, my advisor brings to me an undergraduate student who's a first year, to train him in research. And that was exciting and strange and weird and very frustrating and all of that to me. Because, I had to show him how to write on a notebook and all of these things, wrong spellings, no date, all of these things, little things. But, it was very interesting, and we were good friends for a long time. And something that he always told me was, you don't know how lucky you are to understand chemistry. That really struck me. And I think as you and me, like we as chemists, the privilege we've had from, I'm a Christian, so I think privilege I've had from God to understand these concepts and to apply these in problems or questions or research or whatever it might be is one of the most important things that I've had. So I want to help students to do the same thing. And I think that is what drives me. And that is one important lesson I've learned from my student. And um, I think that is the general message from all the students. They need to learn. And, there's a lot of students who go through difficulties and who are doing extremely hard, having an extremely hard life. And especially now with the crises around the world, students are having a hard time. And being able to help them and their need for getting that help is one of the most important things that I've learned from my students, and something that keeps me going every day.
Previously, you spoke about this matter a little bit, and I would like to ask, what is the ultimate discovery that you envision on making through your research studies? You spoke that you are doing currently these activities. If it is not restricted by patent laws or any legal restrictions, you can speak about that as well.
Yes. I don't know. Like that's what keeps me going, and I'm not a person who plans very much ahead. What I'm thinking about is doing the right thing at the right moment and doing it right. I try to do what I'm doing right now in the best possible way, and that gives me a goal for the next day or next hour or something like that. And I think if I know the ultimate goal, it'll be a little bit boring for me, because then I will know definitely how to get there, or I will know that I'll never be able to get there. So I'm a researcher, so I'm constantly searching for that. And I think that's the most exciting part of being a scientist, because you always have questions, and those questions and problems are what keeps me going. I can tell you this. When I was a teenager, I had, like any teenager, I had a lot of things written on my walls. And weirdly enough, one thing was AMAT starts, one day you'll end up at treetops. Aim at treetops, you'll end up at nowhere. So that sort of stays in me, like you have to try your best. And I tell this to my students all the time. Don't take it for granted. Try your best on everything. And if you try your best, I think that's going to give you tremendous results no matter what you're doing. And I think at the end of the day, you're successful because you did what you had to do.
If you aim at a particular thing, definitely you might miss several things in your surrounding, right? So you discover
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah. So when I teach my students, some students come and tell me, I need only a B in your class. And I tell them that's not going to happen. If you aim for a B, you're probably going to get a C or a B. But if you aim for an A, you might get a B. So I think that's very important to see it that way.
Is there any particular thing that you definitely want to do for your alma mater or the motherland?
Yes. So, like I said, I'm very excited, and it gives me a lot of thrill to help people, and I've been lucky enough to do that in different ways. And right now, what I would really love to do is help out our bright undergraduate students to, pave their way up to where they want to be. And I'm in constant contact with Sri Lankan professors, and what I would like to show people the way to get to where they want to be, because I think Sri Lankan students, not to say that any other country, students from any other country or the US are not as good as them, but I know Sri Lankan students are particularly very talented and very hardworking, and that's what it takes to be a good scientist. You don't have to be super smart. If you're smart, that's great. But even if you're not that smart, that's okay. Even if you work hard, if you do your part, I think that can go a long way. So I'm currently in the process of recruiting students, and I will do that continuously and try to open up doors for new undergraduate students to come and do some research either with me or any other universities in the States, and help out students to go to their goals. Because I think in the Colombo University, at least when I was a chemistry special student, we were just automatically pushed into applying to grad school, because everybody applies. But I don't think that's the same if you go to a different university. Like there's almost 10 federal universities in Sri Lanka, and some of the rural ones, students don't know how to apply to. Their professors don't have much contacts. So helping out those students gives me tremendous pleasure, and paving their futures, something that I love to do, and I'm in the process of doing it, but that's something that I want to do. Number two is collaborative research, and I'm really excited of Dr. Abhay Singh being in University of Colombo now, and even other people. I have a research lab, and we are still in the baby stages, like I said, but we can certainly try to do good science and collaborate, and for the betterment of science, and students. And nothing is more important than that. Our personal interests or anything like that, I think everything is beyond that. Helping out students and science and the country is actually absolutely important.
As a scientist who involved in the central science, what do you think about the role of chemistry in other sciences and any other career? I think you are the best person to ask that question, because you are combining your knowledge and the passion in biology and chemistry to work together. So, what do you think about the role of chemistry in other careers?
I think it's huge. And honestly, I think in the Sri Lankan education system, people need to identify the importance of basic sciences a little bit more. I was actually very surprised to learn when I moved to the US that in the US, many different undergraduate degrees make use of scientific courses. You would be surprised to hear that a lot of people who are doing a lot of different degrees like nursing and maybe psychiatry or something like that, philosophy, they take general chemistry and organic chemistry. They have to. That's sort of mandated. So I can tell you in our department, about 50% of the undergraduate population in UAB goes through chemistry at some point. So they learn chemistry. Why? Because they are not going to think about elements or reactions after the first 2 years. But what that trains you in, I think, is logical thinking, quantitative analysis, statistics, evaluation. Try to evaluate your results and what that all means. And these things are very important in life. No matter what your career is, if you want to be a successful professionalist, these skills are going to be very important. So I think it's extremely important, and we need to identify the importance of chemistry and also other basic sciences a little bit more.
Sometimes we see that the scientists who do hardcore research, sometimes they shift their paths and change the research avenues or even their profession also. In future, do you see yourself moving in a different direction?
No. So yeah, so this was my dream job. I'll give you a quick question. I think I'm giving you two lengthy answers, but anyways, so when you come to the US and you go through grad school, academia is not an easy goal. I'm not saying I'm really good, but it was almost impossible to think about even going to academia. And people were asking me the question, "Are you crazy?" It's extremely competitive to go to academia, and also you have to be extremely lucky to get a job in academia. And I always wanted to go to academia because I never wanted to go to an industry and do the same thing every day or something like that. I would be extremely bored to do that. So I always wanted to go to academia, and I was blessed with all my career paths and fantastic mentors who showed me the way to do that. And here I am. So I think I love my job and I enjoy it every single day. So that's actually absolutely important to be successful too. And you may or may not know, but we are in the US. You have a tenure process. So if you get hired in academia, you'd have to show success in 5 years and show people that you can do research, you can publish, you can teach well, and then they evaluate you at the end of 5 years, and they sort of make you a permanent faculty, or they just ask you to find a different job depending on where you stand. So my tenure is coming up in 3 more years or 4 more years because of COVID. So let's see where I am. If I'm not, if I'm not fired, I'm not going to go anywhere.
Okay, I hope you won't get fired.
I hope so too. Yeah.
I would like to ask more about your family and friends. How supportive have your family and friends have been to you to reach your current destination?
Yeah. So I think that's actually very important, especially coming from a country like Sri Lanka, where people are, it's a people's country, right? Everybody is very friendly, and for me, it has been everything. And I'll tell you, the most important pieces of my success has come from different parts of my friends and family. So family and friends, and then also teachers, my teachers, and then also my students. They have all been important parts of my career. So in my family, I like I said, I was the only child, and my mother and father are both teachers, and my father certainly wasn't able to, go as far as he wanted in his education. He had to, take a turn and go to teaching because of different reasons back then. So every morning when we have tea together, he would tell me, like, this is what you should do. You should keep trying. You should keep going at it. Like, challenges will come, but you have to do this. You have to do this, and that sort of got into me. Like, no matter how hard it was, I always had my eyes on my goal, and it helped me going. And then later on, I found my wife and in Colombo University, and we moved to the US together, and it was very tough. And I think she has been a very important part of my success, and believing in me when things were not good. Like, it had not been very smooth throughout all these 10 years we've been here. And then now my daughter, like, so she's a challenge with all this work, but certainly gives me a lot of motivation to keep going. And like I said, my friends have always been my family, and I've gotten into a lot of hard times because I trusted my friends a lot. I still trust them, so that keeps me going, and all of that is important. And teachers have helped me out a lot, especially in school days and also in the university. And then my graduate mentor, Dr. Timothy Jackson in University of Kansas, and Dr. Ken Carlin in University of Johns Hopkins University. So all of them have treated me like family. It was not easy. They were tough bosses to work with, but that toughness had taught me a lot of big lessons. And my students, like, I could never sleep not doing the right thing for my students. And I always try to do the best out of best. And I just hope they'll take the best out of me as well. So all of these things had really pushed me to where I am, and definitely in the future too.
As the last question, sir, do you have any words of advice and inspiration to the young chemists all around the world, especially in Sri Lanka, who are watching us today?
Yeah, so it's a hard question to tackle, but I think I'm going to answer in two important points. One thing is, I think one of the biggest missing parts that I've seen in students who are trying to be successful, but not really getting to that position, is that you have to take pride in who you are. You have to love yourself, and that's very important. You have to take take time off, make sure your PI or your professor understands you, have hobbies, have a balanced life, care for people whom you love, and try to be with other people. You can't just be a good chemist by being on the bench for 24 hours. And you have to always also be comfortable in who you are. I think that's very important. No matter how the world treats you or how the world sees you, especially when you get out of Sri Lanka or your motherland, um, you still have to keep believing in yourself. And after a while, everybody else will also start believing in you because they don't have an option. They'll have to believe in you. So I think that's important to realize that you have to be comfortable in yourself, and have the real motivation to do what you want to do, still being who you are. Second point is perseverance. I think you have to keep going. You cannot give up, because nobody's gonna be believing in you if you give up, right? You have to keep working for yourself. You have to keep proving yourself, like I said earlier. And chemistry is hard. It's not easy. So if anybody is trying to do chemistry PhD just to earn a lot of money, that's just not going to happen, because it's hard. One of the words of advice my postdoc advisor, Dr. Carlin, who is a very senior scientist who's closing in on 40 years of research now, a very successful scientist as well, who always tells us in group meeting, who said chemistry was easy? That's what he always says. It's hard, and you have to keep going. You have to keep trying. And I think, like I said earlier, effort is more important than how smart you are. If you are smart enough, maybe you can put a little bit of less effort and still be successful. But the smartness really in research is not very important. You have to keep trying. If you read your papers, if you understand your goals, and if you keep going, and self-evaluate is important. I tell all my students, evaluate yourself at the end of Friday or Saturday, whenever you finish your week. Evaluate yourself. Try to write down a list of things. Did you learn a new thing about whatever you were trying to do this week? And that's, I think, very important. So that will give you the strength to keep going, to keep hitting the right goals. And I also try to write down people's advice, good and bad. I still have pieces of paper that I wrote down from my PhD advisor's times when he was mad with me, he was yelling at me, whatever, upset with me. And I go back and read those, like when I lose interest and when I lose hope, I go back and read those. And I think they give me a lot of passion to keep going. You can't turn back. And I think those are important. And then also identify your priorities. And you have to divide your time among your priorities, right? If you want to go play sport, watch TV, that's fine. But you have to identify your priorities and divide your time according to those priorities. And best things in life are expensive. They are not going to come on a gold plate. You need to try. You need to work hard. And I think that's what has kept me going. Finally, I'll tell you a story. In my grad school, so you're in grad school for 5 years. When I first entered into grad school, my advisor gave me 2 papers to read and identify whatever project you wanted to do, and I did. And then he gave me a ligand to synthesize, which I had absolutely no idea how to do. And so I was talking to a graduate, organic faculty and organic students, and I had a really hard time trying to make this ligand and make this project work. And over 3 years, I had 0 results. I was just trying to make a ligand. And it was tough. I'll go to group meetings with 0 results. And then after I passed my 3rd year, a project started working. But all of that experience that I have gained in the 3 years helped me get a lot of papers out of those 2 years. So that is a simple example on why you shouldn't give up, and talk to the right people when you need to talk to somebody. And we all need someone else, so talk to the right people. And if you need to talk to me, I'm here. And that's important.
I thought of concluding today's session with the previous question, but I have one more question to ask from you, sir. What do you think about this series of interviews, particularly about today's interview?
I think it's a fantastic idea. And I think seeing these people talk, and I've watched your interviews too, and especially Judith Kleinman and Harry B. Gray are big, huge giants in my field. And I've really enjoyed talking to them and seeing them too. And I think that'll certainly inspire the new or the young generation of Sri Lanka. If you have a few minutes, I can tell you another small, important story from my career. When I was a graduate student, thank you. When I was a graduate student, we would always read papers. My advisor was a tenure track professor back then. I was the fourth graduate student in the group, and now he's a full professor. So we would read all these papers and important papers in the field. And a name that came up on paper all the time was Kenneth Carlin from Johns Hopkins University, and I read his papers. I was in love with his papers, and I did orals. That is the PhD qualifying exam at the end of 3 years in grad school. I did my orals exam on Ken Carlin's research, and I was absolutely in love with that research. And in my fourth year, I was able to go to a Gordon conference, a conference in California, and I saw Carlin. And he was sitting in the front row, and I went and talked to him. And that inspired me to apply to his group as a postdoc. And I was able to go to his group, and it was huge for me because this is a person whom I saw on the paper and whom I loved as a fantastic, outstanding scientist, and now I'm in his group. And that sort of really pushed me over the edge. And I think what you're doing with this series is actually fantastic and absolutely important. And I think a lot of scientists who are here, even from the US or who came from other countries, they have a lot of experience. It's not been easy for any of them, right? It's a tough industry. It's a tough area. So I think that can motivate a lot of students, and you can condense all of their experience into 45 minutes and give all of those lessons to your undergraduate students, which is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic effort, and I hope the students in the university will make good use of all of these efforts. And thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for those inspirational words, sir. With that, we have come to the end of another extremely inspiring, interesting, and educational segment. From this segment, I think you all learned how a person who had a passion towards biology and chemistry ended up being a bioinorganic chemist. At the same time, a person who taught his friends when he was doing advanced level became a professor in the University of Alabama at Birmingham. So I think it is a great inspiration for all of us. It is with sincere gratitude that I thank you for your time and participation, sir. We wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. And thank you very much for joining with us today.
Thank you, Vindula.
Thank you everyone for joining with me to watch this interview. And I hope you all gain vast knowledge and experience, valuable insights and advices to improve your life as well as your academic career. And let us meet with many more interesting segments like this. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.